Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode in the modding series. I've got something planned this episode for simplifying my life considerably, and I've also done a little bit of testing in previous, in between the previous episode and now, and the test of course did not work, because what I'm trying to do is spawn a new entity player MP, so a new actual player entity. I wanted to see if I could do that, and then ideally control the entity player from a block, because I thought that would be a cool machine to do. Of course, this causes crashes, particularly the one that's currently being reached first, although I'm sure there are many others in the works, is a null pointer exception, and I'm assuming that's because the server is trying to send messages to the logical client on the other end that doesn't exist. So that's causing null pointer exceptions. So yeah, this doesn't work. So we'll be ignoring that for the time being, but it does present to you a plan I have for the future where I want to create some kind of remote control mob that will do player related tasks for you, being controlled by some kind of a crystal block. So yeah, I've got that kind of idea brewing. So that might be a fun thing for another episode. In this one though, I want to make a generic base block class, because what I don't have is that, and currently, not that one. Currently, what I've got going is a lot of manual typing, and I'd really like to demanualify the typing there. So what my plan is to do is I will create some kind of a list of blocks that I want to make, and just instantiate the same class but with different parameters, hopefully, and create multiple blocks that way. I need to figure out the specifics a little bit more, but I think we can. I think a decent idea would be to copy this code and create something like that. Create something from this, I suppose, and hopefully we can add hopefully we can add lore to it in this way. That's my main concern, because I'm not sure when add information is being called. So if we can call this or set the variable later for this being called or something in the constructor, then that would be ideal, but I don't know if we can actually do that, so we'll see. Okay, so what I've got here is basically just the copied code in another class here, block simple I renamed it to, because it's going to be every simple block we make is going to be made with this class, I think. And what we want to do is make all this information dependent on dependent on the constructor, as opposed to actual manual hard coding. And I think that should be pretty easy just by doing things like material and string, I guess unlocalized name, or maybe uname, that's a much easier thing to type, and string registry name, and stuff like that. Maybe we could also do the creative tab, but I think most of this is going to be in the creative tab, artificial artificing anyway, so I don't know if that's necessary. But yeah, and then down here we call, instead of just giving it a value, we call super material, and boy. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. And then instead of set unlocalized name this, we set unlocalized name to uname, and registry name to, I guess we could just have this be the same, since I always make it the same anyway, so we'll just say name, and get rid of the second parameter, since I don't care. So set registry and unlocalized name to name instead of hard coding it in there as well. So I'll do that sort of thing with the rest of them too. As for the add information tooltip, or sorry, as for the add information method, I found out on the Minecraft forum, the modder support forum, that this thing is called every tick when the item tooltip is rendering. So that should work for the customization, I think. Yeah, so for the class, we will alter the innards of this method depending on what's passed into the constructor. I think I've actually got this working now. So we've got an array list for the tooltip strings, and down here in the add information, it calls or it iterates through the list and adds the string to the tooltip. So I think that'll work pretty nicely. And over here, I've got the constructor finished up, so it takes the material, the name, the hardness, the sound, light, opacity, tool class, harvest level, and the tooltip string, or string array list, tooltip array list. And then it calls all the necessary things with the given parameters, and I think that'll work all good and dandy if we use it in Startup Common. Then we I've also changed the Startup Client, which is the thing that sets the model for the item block, and so it takes in the item block that you want the model for, and it creates a resource location using the registry name of that item block, and then it also sets the model. So I think that'll work nicely as well. We have to call that for each item block, I think. Yeah. So we can do that with a for loop, hopefully. I need to figure out the specifics of the calling these methods in a second, but I think we can actually just add one right now. I'm going to try and do one for one of the crystal textures which I have. Let's see, down in textures we've got lots of crystal textures, and they're actually nice transparent just colors. So I think it'll be a good block set to add to the game. So I'm going to have each one be available as an actual building block. Since I've already got the textures, I might as well. So over in Startup Common, then I think what we're going to do is let's see. No, I need to think about this off camera. It requires thought, so I can't do it while talking. As a test here, we're going to try and add one of those crystal blocks. So we've got block crystal blue as being created in pre-init or pre-init common, and we're going to instantiate it to a new instance of block simple, material.glass, passing it in all those parameters, and over at the end here I've actually got bad highlighting. Over at the end here I've got block tooltips.simple crystal tip, and that's because over in block tooltips I've got array list simple crystal tip, and we've filled it with fill tips, and fill tips is being called in startup common before this happens, so we won't get a null pointer exception. And I've also used some variables from config variables, or created some new ones and then used them rather, such as hardness, light level, and light opacity of the crystals. I basically just wanted a universal place to store that information, and I thought, well, why not give the players power over that stuff as well. So it's in the config variables now. So what we have to do here now is, since we've got this block instance, we want to register it, and we're going to put block crystal blue down in the register all function or method, since this is Java. And now we need to give the item block the model and set the registry name of the item block. So maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do the registry naming inside the other thing, or inside the constructor. What is it? Not the constructor, but inside this method. We could set the registry name of the item block inside this thing. So yeah, so the item blocks there are pretty much the same as other item blocks, but there is a slight difference. Also in here, I need to get rid of unlocalized name because that's not something you set for an item block. Anyway, the slight difference though is over in client proxy, instead of calling the direct universal startup client .preinit, what we would do is artificing dot. I should have copied that beforehand. Sorry. So yeah, what we do is blocks dot what's it called, simple, and we want to call startup client dot preinit client, and then give it the item block. So that would be startup common dot item block crystal blue. Yeah, crystal blue. And that's the primary difference there. So I am also going to experiment with some even better systems for doing all this stuff, even simpler. Hopefully I can get it down to just a couple lines of code every time I want to add a new item block or block. Currently though, that's not what I've done. I've also just discovered that I can do this, and I'm probably going to use that instead of this new array list, then fill array list, because that's a little bit more complicated than just creating a new field with a list of stuff. So that'll be a simpler method of doing things. However, at the moment we can actually test this. So I'm going to hop into the world, and we'll see if this block is there. Yep, got a crash there. So we need to get rid of this, and that's because over in startup common, I'm already setting the registry name down here. So when it called that other thing, then it was messing things up there. So let's see if we get a crash now. So yeah, with just those few lines of code there, what we've got now is a block that doesn't have a name because we didn't update it in the lang file. No texture or model specified because again we didn't specify those. And it has the properties we wanted. So it's a glass material. You can hear that. Glass sound type. And if you mine it with a pickaxe, it's quicker, like that, depending on the material. So that's all good. We got our parameters set just by that one method, and we didn't have to make a whole new class for it. So that's all pretty nice. And it also gives the tooltip a shiny block of magical crystal. So that's excellent. So what we need to do now is basically just make a block state for these crystals, and hopefully we can find some way of maybe auto-generating the files, or failing in that, just some generic thing that we copy paste and tweak. So I'll work on that for a minute and get back to you in just a second. Yes, I forgot. There is one more thing we need to do, but that all works now. There is one more thing we have to do, in that we have to add a parameter to our constructor for the rendering layer, since most of our blocks happen to be transparent or translucent. So that's pretty easily done. If we go into, where is it? Block, nope, not that one, block simple. We go ahead and override, yeah, we would have to override the block layer, which I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, so I'm going to go over to one of these other ones. Yeah, so down here you can see, where is it? Override is full cube, opaque cube, get block render layer. So we would override these two, but I don't know if we can change the values there. Give it a different value for every instance of this class. But we'll give it a shot. Maybe it's like the add information and it's called every render tick or something. So let's add a parameter here. Boolean is opaque, opaque, and another parameter which would be a block render layer, right? Yeah, block render layer, block render layer, layer, and then we would go over here where we have our other variable and say add a boolean, or episode, no, anyway, boolean opaque, or is opaque. Actually, I don't want to mix these names up because then I have to specify. So opaque, and we will say equals false by default. And now in this area here, we need to set those variables to the correct things. So opaque equals is opaque, right? And our layer equals layer. All right, I think that'll work now. And then over in startup common, since we've wrecked our method there, we need to rewrite this to include those parameters. Whoops, had that set to false instead of true. Since we want the default to be solid, it ought to be by default set to an opaque cube being true. Alright, I think quite a few changes have happened since the previous clip, but not too much to be overwhelming, I don't think. So over in where is it? The block simple class, I have changed over to the easier to fill type of array of strings. So we don't actually have to run fill array list or fill tips or whatever the method was. So that's an improvement. I've also added a second constructor here, which takes a string of a preset. So if we have a bunch of the same type of blocks, we don't have to rewrite all the parameters. We'll just make a new preset for that, and then pass in the string for the preset and test if it's test if we want to use those that preset by testing the string. So that's all good. And over in startup common, you can see my implementation of that down here. Block crystal blue equals new block simple crystal block crystal blue and material.glass. I would have set the material in the preset as well, except the material field in a block is a final field, so I can't adjust it once I've set it already, and it has to be called at the start of the if statement too. So I can't set it to one thing and then change it. Now it's a parameter, so that's fine, I guess. Certainly still better than the big list of parameters. Anyway, another thing that's changed though, we have simplified the process of registering the blocks on my end. So over in this area, we say we get a list of fields in this class from startup.common.class.getFields, and we check if it's an instance of block simple, and if it is, we register it. So that's simple enough, and I don't have to put each one into a register all method like this, and I'll adapt this to all blocks if it works. I just want to make sure I'm not going to wreck everything before I adapt the lists and whatnot. Also, down in the item blocks section, let's see. I've moved this up to the top, so hopefully that'll work. I'm not sure if it will though, because when I'm calling this up at the top here, equals new item block crystal blue. Block crystal blue hasn't actually been initialized yet, so we might get a crash from that. If so, then I'll just move it back and deal with it. But also down here we have a similar thing. If one of the fields we're iterating through is an item block, then we set its registry name to its block's registry name, and then we register it to the items, or to the items registry. So that will clear out all this commented text there, and all this commented text here. So that's a big improvement as well. And I've got a lot of other ideas I want to implement too. But before I go on and do some of that, I need to actually test the thing. So we may be about to get a crash. So yeah, we did get a crash, but it wasn't a bad crash. It's one I can understand easily. In fact, it's the one I predicted there. So over in our over in our list down here, after it crashed, I found that this was the line giving it trouble, and I added a print command. So it's printing out the name of the thing it's trying to do stuff with. And if we look back here, you can see it prints item block apprentice table, magical wood, cobble wood, proving it's to darkness powder, etc., all the way down to item block crystal blue, and then it gives a null pointer exception when it tries to access the block. And when it tries to access the block attached to block crystal blue, it fires a null pointer exception, and that's because up here, when we actually fed it the value that it kept, the value didn't exist because block crystal blue wasn't initialized yet. So so we can fix that easily by moving this down, or this part down. But one thing I do want to try is moving this tab declaration up to the top. So I don't know if we have to do it in pre-init, but if we don't have to do it in pre-init, then I can move the tab declaration up to the top, and then we can also move the block declarations, or initializations, I should probably be saying, up to the top as well. Because the reason we have to keep them down here is that if we don't keep them down here, if we put them up at the top, when they try to be registered or chucked into the artificial artificing tab, it doesn't exist. So that's a problem for them. So what I'm going to do here is I'll move this thing down so we don't get a crash, and I will test whether or not I can move this thing up. And if we can, then I'll move this stuff up, and then I'll move this stuff back up, and hopefully that'll all work out. Excellent. we have this tab. So I moved the tab up, and I also moved this thing down so we wouldn't crash it while we were testing. And the tab still works. Everything was still added. So that gives us the go-ahead to bring the blocks back up and the items back up. And all that will have the number of names I have to write, which is going to be a huge, huge time saver. Yes. We've got the table, and we also have its item block, because I did also change that. I tweaked it over here. See, no more this, and also no more this. No more equals new item block down there. The equals new item block is up here. Where is it? new item block here. So that all works nicely, and that means we can move everything else into the point where I only have to write 2 lines of code and I've got a new block. Or actually, we do have to do something more before I can write 2 lines of code and have a new block. I have to write some code that will generate JSON models for them, but I'll get to that in just a minute. First, I need to do some other things, like I said. Alright, we've got all this stuff moved up top, so it's not going to have to be written twice. And although probably I've already used up a significant portion of the writing that I'm saving myself, just writing that out. But whatever, it's definitely very expandable now. So if we go down here, I think we can comment out all of this. I'm not going to get rid of it just yet, in case I've made some grave error, and also this one. And down here, I'm going to say if instance of simply block, then we go with that, and now we get rid of this as well. At least I think so. No, I'm pretty sure that'll work. And we can get rid of all of this. So satisfying. And let's see. We can do something similar with items, but I don't have an item base yet, so we can't quite get rid of all this. And down here, resource, yep, that's all good then. Alright, I need to test this, and hopefully we've still got everything with a huge amount of writing and complication gone. And there we go. Wonderful. So that really is all we have to do now. We just write something, we just write a couple lines up here, and it's mostly automated now. So, like I said, I want to also generate the .jsons. So let me take a look down here, down into block states and models, and yeah, that should be. Oh yeah, and we also have to generate these ones for the blocks. Okay, so what we have to do then is, let's see, where's Cobblewood or Crystal Blue? Open with text editor. All right, oi, guay. So all we have to do is basically print this into a new file if that file doesn't exist, and print the name here instead of this, or instead of block crystal blue. Print whatever name is fed in. So we'll check to see if the file exists. If it doesn't, we'll create it, write this stuff, and customize the resource location here. A long time later, this is what we've got. So over in I've decided to add the generating scripts or generating methods in utilities. So now we have up here the various strings that we need to print into these new files, and down here we have a lot of stuff. So most of this is for getting the directory, and most of this is calling the file creation at that directory. And the file creating methods are down here, where they write the string that we've set up at the top here, and the name, and the other string. So what that's going to do is something like this. It'll print this part, and then the name, and then this part. And it does that sort of thing for the rest of them as well. So the only thing that's left for me to do is to test it. So over in Startup Common, we've got utilities.generate simple block JSONs. We've got it all down in one method here, block heyo, and hopefully we should get some heyo JSONs over in our column here. So I'll watch the console, make sure everything runs past up to and past that script, and there it goes. So now I can stop that, and we will reload. I don't see a heyo.json here. Okay, so over in the console, let's see. Yeah, it seems to be saying generating. Hold on. Over in utilities, I've got it printing generating simple block model JSON 4 plus the name plus the path, and over at the console it says generating. Let's see, generating simple block state JSON, block model JSON, and simple item block JSON for block heyo at the right path, or at least I think it's the right path. I'll examine it in just a second off camera. So that looks good. We might have the files here. I've noticed in the past some glitchiness in the showing up of newly generated files, so they might already be there. So I'll reload and check the file paths and make sure everything's good. I've changed to nothing, and I've hit reload a couple times. In models/block, we have block heyo, and if we open it with text editor, you can see we've got exactly what we want there. So artificial artificing with the colon, the block heyo, the quotes. So it looks like everything was formatted correctly. I got my copy pasting right from the previous script, or previous JSON, sorry. So I think everything's good, and maybe if we reload a couple more times, it'll eventually show up. I'll check in the actual file system in Explorer, but in the meantime, I think it's working. We just aren't seeing the files because Eclipse is rather finicky about showing you files. So I did check the files. They're all there, even though I haven't gotten any of the other ones to show up in Eclipse. But they're all there in Explorer. Opened them up with WordPad and Notepad++ and whatever. And I did get one nasty surprise. It turns out I've done this wrong, in that we have three methods here, one for generating the simple block state JSONs, one for generating simple block model JSONs, and one for the item block JSONs. And over here, I'm calling the block state JSON creation at every single one of those locations. So I got a bunch of block state JSONs. Not too much of a surprise there in retrospect. But what we want to be calling is block model JSONs for the block model JSONs for the block model JSON, and item block JSONs for the item block, as opposed to block states for all of them. I think all this should work now, so what I'm going to do is actually try and add a block with it. So we're going to take this generate simple block state JSONs, and we're going to move it into the actual script, or actual loop, instead of block heyo. What a surprise, we don't actually want that. Instead of block heyo, we want oh, is this the item block one? Yeah, we don't actually want the item block thing. Okay, up in the blocks area, or actually we don't even have to call it here. We can just call it in the constructor, of course. So over in actually, over in block simple then, we can just say block simple, and down here, generate simple block JSONs for name, and that'll be perfectly fine. That'll just call whenever the constructor is called, and it won't be looped through in the in the registry system every time I want to register. Every time I launch the game. Hopefully this one won't take forever. So all I have to do is public static. Well, item block. Yes, I thought I was at the top though. Yeah. Okay. Public static block simple, and we'll make a green one. So block crystal green equals new block simple, and we're making a crystal, so we've already got a preset for that. Extra convenient. And block crystal green is the name of the texture and the name I want this thing to be called, and we'll give it the material.glass. Alright, that's one of the lines of code. Oh, missing an L. There we go. And second line of code, I believe, is just here, where we say public static item block crystal, and then in this case it's green equals new item block of that one, and I think that's it, right? So that gets us our block with the parameters. This gets us the item block for that thing. Over here we register everything. Over here we register everything, and we've already got the thing, and we should be getting our models generated automatically. So let's launch the game and see if we have our block. Although I did just remember I didn't update the lang file. That's our third line of code for the new block. Oh yeah, in the console it says generating simple block state JSON for block crystal green. Uh-oh, I've got a model exception over on the right for block crystal green. So not entirely flawless apparently. I'll have to check that. And indeed, that seems to be an issue. It does have the right parameters though. Yes, finally. That took a lot longer than expected. I figured out the trick though. I can do it again. I can recreate the coolness. Okay, so the problem was Eclipse wasn't noticing the files, and that was what was causing the error in the Minecraft loading as well. So I'm going to make a new one. I'll show you how I got the thing to realize that the files existed. Alright, I've just finished adding 4 more blocks, and boy howdy is it so much easier. In total, for one block, it takes 4 lines of typing, most of which can be copy-pasted. So before you get working models, you have to run it once to get the things to generate, and then you can stop it halfway through. And now we have a bunch of files, but Eclipse doesn't realize they exist. So what happens if we rename this folder here, it says resource is out of sync with the file system, and watch over here, or watch this line here, maybe something. Just watch this block. As I press OK, it finds one of them. So it's just added cyan into the mix. And if we press this again, it'll find another one, gray. And if we press it again, it'll find lime. And if we press it again, it'll find magenta. And if we keep pressing it, it'll find all the ones it's missed, which is a fair few of them. Okay, and then cancel. So it's found them all now. And if we launch the game, selection does not contain a main type, huh? What, this? Yeah, okay. So yeah, if we launch the game now, I'm probably not going to get an error. I hope not. At least that's how I understand it. Looks like I did get the right directory there as well, so that's good. And I haven't gotten an error yet. It's into initialization completing. Yep, no errors. And if we load into the game, actually it just said object did not get the ID expected, so we might have gotten a mix-up there. No, got four nice little blocks right there, and we can add them to our mix. And now you can see what I was talking about earlier when I said they were pretty nice colored and textured smooth blocks. They're pretty nice looking. I like them. And that was hugely easier to add those 8 blocks than it would have been at the start of this episode. So I'm very pleased with this. And all of them, game mode 0, all of them have our settings assigned from that earlier thing we did with the parameters and the constructors. So that's pretty excellent. We've now got a very useful system for easily implementing new blocks, and I think that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.